talk about squats, lunges, and deadlifts. A lot of people are afraid to do squats and lunges, or they say that it hurts their knees. Let's talk about why. Oftentimes, it's not their knees that's the problem, it's their form. So let's look at how to do a proper squat first. You can practice by putting a chair or a surface behind you and practice sitting down. Notice, in a squatting position, your hips are going to go back before you lower yourself down and bend the legs. The problem arises when you start to bend your legs before you hip hinge back a little bit. So right here, you're gonna, as if you're about to sit down, you bend the legs and then stand back up. If I went to do this, I wouldn't be able to sit back down. So right here, back and forward. Without a chair, back and forward. So in my series or any workout that you do, you can always use a chair until you feel comfortable doing the squats on their own. Lunges, you want to make sure with a lunge, the same concept, your knees stay behind your toes. You want to step back with your feet hip width apart. So imagine when you step back, you do not want to stack your feet in one line. That is going to make it difficult to balance. You want to keep your feet shoulder to hip width apart as you step back and then come back up. Step back and come back up. Like your feet are on train tracks and not a tightrope. That is a great example I've heard used, and it's so great when you're doing it to think about train track versus tightrope. Train track versus a tightrope. From the side, you also don't want to push forward as you're lunging down. So not pushing forward, rather bring the hip back behind you, knee stays behind the toe, and then you press back up. Right here. If you do not have the stability to start out with, in any of my workouts, please feel free to use a surface so that you can find that stability and then progress to not using it at all. Last but not least, let's talk about a deadlift, which is a hip hinge movement. We want to keep our legs slightly bent, our arms and shoulders back and engaged. It's a great idea to think about 2 pens stuck under your armpits. I know that sounds weird, that doesn't happen, but it's a great analogy to keep your lats and shoulders engaged rather than rounding forward. So engage the lats. As you go forward, it's more of a backward movement through the hips, and then the hips push forward. Hips go back, hips come forward, as opposed to your back just coming down and up. You see the difference? My glutes are staying in the same spot the whole time rather than hip hinging. So shoulders back engaged, pens under the armpits. You could even actually put pens under there and try that out. And then keep the weights close to the body. Don't bring them out here as you go back. Now, everybody's range of motion is going to be different. For example, some people will be able to go lower and other people will have to stay shallow. It just depends on your maximum range of motion through that hip hinge movement. So lastly, you come down, keeping the back flat. We don't want to round the shoulders forward and round the back. Think about sticking a cup of coffee on that back, nice and flat, and come back up. The last thing is keeping the crown of the head facing the opposite wall. So we don't want to be up here with the chin looking up and putting that compression on our cervical spine. So chin is down, shoulders engaged, hips go back, engage the core, and then come back up. With weights, it looks like this. And when you come up, squeeze the glutes. break. So there you have it. I hope those are helpful form pointers for your squats, your lunges, and your deadlifts. See you next tutorial.